This is George Mallory, a British schoolteacher and mountaineer. He became one of the most famous climbers of the early 20th century. And this is Andrew Irvine, known to friends as Sandy. He was a 22-year-old engineer and the youngest member of the 1924 British Everest Expedition. Together, Mallory and Irvine formed a partnership that would attempt something no human had ever achieved, standing on the summit of Mount Everest. In May 1924, the team established camps along the north face of Everest. Their route followed this ridgeline to the summit. According to expedition journals, Mallory selected Irvine as his climbing partner because of Irvine's skill maintaining oxygen equipment, an advantage considered essential at such altitude. On June 8, 1924, they departed Camp 6, at approximately 26,800 feet. From this point, the mountain's summit was less than 1,000 vertical feet above them. At 12:50 p.m., Noel Odell, a geologist on the expedition, reported seeing two figures climbing what he believed to be the second step, a prominent rock barrier near the summit. This was the last confirmed sighting of Mallory and Irvine alive. Shortly after, clouds closed over the ridge and they disappeared from view. When they failed to return, search teams combed the high camps. No trace was found. Over the decades that followed, the fate of Mallory and Irvine became one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in mountaineering history. In 1999, an American team discovered George Mallory's body at 26,700 feet. His remains were remarkably preserved by the cold. These items confirmed his identity, but Andrew Irvine was still missing, and so was the small Kodak camera he was believed to be carrying. Many historians believed that camera could hold evidence proving whether they reached the summit nearly 3 decades before Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay. For almost a century, Irvine's disappearance remained unsolved. But in 2024, melting ice and a renewed search would reveal the first new evidence since Mallory's discovery, sparking fresh debate over who first stood atop the world's highest peak. In the decades after 1924, the mystery surrounding Andrew Irvine drew climbers, researchers, and historians back to Everest again and again. The first major attempt to recover evidence came in 1933, when a British expedition searched the same route Mallory and Irvine had climbed. During that expedition, climber Percy Wynne Harris discovered this ice axe, confirmed to belong to Irvine at an elevation of about 27,700 feet. The discovery suggested that Irvine may have fallen during the descent, though no body was ever located. Over the following decades, numerous expeditions combed the North Face. Teams from Britain, China, and the United States mounted searches specifically to find Irvine's remains, and perhaps more importantly, the camera he carried. The Kodak vest pocket camera was small enough to fit in a jacket pocket. If recovered and developed, it could contain photographs verifying whether the summit was reached. Search teams focused on areas below the second step, where Noel Odell last saw the pair. These zones, marked here on this map, became the primary targets for recovery efforts. Additional evidence gradually emerged. Oxygen bottles, torn clothing, and fragments of equipment were located in the upper gullies, each a clue to what might have happened in their final hours. But Everest's extreme environment has kept the mystery intact. Blizzards, avalanches, and constantly shifting snow have buried and revealed artifacts unpredictably. The area known as the Yellow Band and the steep gullies below the second step are among the most dangerous terrain on the mountain, making systematic searches slow and hazardous. Despite these risks, the search continued. Each expedition added fragments to the historical record, but none succeeded in locating Irvine himself or the camera many believe could finally answer the question of whether the summit was reached in 1924. By the early 21st century, advances in technology, satellite imagery, high-resolution drones, and improved climbing gear offered new hope that the final clues might be found. Even with these tools, Everest has remained a formidable guardian of its secrets. It would take another generation and the melting of ancient ice to reveal what had been hidden for almost a century. In the spring of 2024, a National Geographic-supported team set out to do what nearly a century of expeditions had failed to accomplish: locate definitive evidence of Andrew Irvine's fate. This is the Central Rongbuk Glacier, a remote, unstable field of ice nearly 7,000 feet below the summit. It had rarely been explored in detail. Led by acclaimed photographer and mountaineer Jimmy Chin, the team included specialists in glaciology, drone mapping, and high-altitude recovery. Their objective was clear: to document every exposed surface made accessible by rapid glacier melt. This was a window of opportunity no previous expedition had seen. Compare these images. On the left, the glacier 10 years earlier, entirely blanketed by snow. On the right, newly revealed rock and debris fields exposed by rising temperatures. The team used drones equipped with high-resolution cameras to scan the surface in overlapping grid patterns. Each flight returned thousands of images. This composite model shows exactly where potential artifacts could emerge. Every crevasse and rockfall was analyzed for clues. Fieldwork on the glacier required careful preparation. Even a minor misstep could send a climber into a hidden crevasse. Over 6 weeks, the team systematically worked sector by sector, mapping and photographing each location with precision. Then, in early June, drone footage revealed something unusual: a cluster of dark shapes resting on a patch of ice that had been under snow for decades. At first, it was impossible to tell what the shapes were, but the team recognized that any object visible at this altitude and in this place demanded closer inspection. Within hours, a ground team set out to verify the find on foot. As they approached, it became clear this was not ordinary debris. In this moment, nearly 100 years after Andrew Irvine vanished, the team was about to uncover evidence that would reignite one of mountaineering's oldest questions. When the ground team reached the coordinates marked by drone footage, they began a detailed visual survey. The first object identified was this: a single leather boot protruding from the melting ice crust. Team members documented the find exactly as it appeared, using high-resolution photography and GPS reference points. From this angle, you can see how the boot rested near a shallow depression where meltwater had pooled, exposing material likely undisturbed for decades. When the boot was gently examined, the team confirmed that it still contained part of a human foot, preserved by cold and ice. Careful brushing revealed a wool sock in remarkably intact condition. Along the cuff, an embroidered label was visible. This name tag, reading ACI Irvine, provided the first definitive physical link to Andrew Irvine since he disappeared in 1924. Once the initial evidence was secured, the team established a 10-meter perimeter to document all nearby materials. Every item and feature was catalogued, measured, and photographed according to established protocols for glacial recovery. Samples were collected for further analysis, including fragments of textile, leather, and biological material for DNA testing. In preliminary statements, expedition leader Jimmy Chin described the moment as, quote, "a sobering and historic confirmation that Irvine's story was still here, preserved in the ice." The remains were carefully prepared for transport under cold storage, ensuring that no additional contamination occurred before laboratory examination. By the end of that day, the team had completed their first detailed assessment. The evidence, once hidden beneath decades of snow, was now documented and preserved for analysis. This single discovery, the boot, the sock, and the partial remains, represented the first direct evidence of Andrew Irvine since the last day he was seen alive. Once the remains were secured, the first step in verification was a detailed comparison between known 1924 expedition equipment and the discovered artifacts. Experts examined stitching patterns and sole construction. Both matched manufacturing details documented in historical inventories of the British expedition. Textile analysts confirmed that the wool sock was consistent with British military-issue materials used in the early 1920s. This archival log, recovered from expedition records, listed Irvine as having been issued boots and socks of this specific type. To strengthen identification, forensic teams collected biological samples from the remains. These samples were sealed for DNA sequencing. The DNA process includes mitochondrial profiling, which can be compared to living descendants of the Irvine family. Every artifact was photographed, weighed, and catalogued to create a complete record before further analysis. Using known sighting locations and discovery coordinates, researchers reconstructed probable routes. This diagram highlights the second step, where they were last seen, and the glacier where the remains were recovered. Mapping historical data against modern satellite imagery allowed analysts to estimate how glacier movement over a century could have transported the remains downslope. In initial assessments, historians agreed that the location, condition of the materials, and embroidered name tag made misidentification unlikely. One expert described the find as, quote, "the most compelling direct evidence of Andrew Irvine to date," though all emphasized the importance of DNA confirmation before declaring absolute certainty. At the time of this report, DNA testing is in progress, with results expected to either confirm or challenge the artifact-based identification. Until results are finalized, the discovery stands as the strongest link yet to a century-old mystery, offering a rare convergence of historical records, physical evidence, and modern science. For decades, the first confirmed ascent of Everest was credited to Sir Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay in 1953. The discovery of Irvine's remains has renewed debate over whether he and Mallory could have reached the summit nearly 30 years earlier. This map illustrates how far the remains were located from the summit, approximately 7,000 feet lower in elevation and well below the second step, where they were last seen. The second step is a nearly 90-foot rock face that remained unclimbed in 1924. It is widely considered the single greatest technical barrier on the route. Some experts argue that if Mallory and Irvine had successfully climbed the second step, their descent could explain the position of the remains, indicating they were on their way down from the summit. But without the small Kodak vest pocket camera that Irvine was believed to carry, there is no photographic proof that either climber reached the top. According to this equipment log, the camera was issued to Irvine specifically for documenting their final push to the summit. Over time, the camera has been described as the holy grail of Everest exploration. If recovered intact, even a single developed image could confirm or refute one of mountaineering's greatest claims. Current consensus among historians is cautious. While the discovery is historic, it does not independently prove that the summit was reached. Several critical questions remain unanswered: whether the pair overcame the second step, how far they ascended before turning back, and what circumstances led to their fall. Future expeditions plan to continue searching the glacier area in hopes that more evidence, including the camera, may still be preserved beneath the ice. As of this report, the remains confirm only that Irvine perished high on the mountain. Whether he stood on the summit remains a question that may never be fully answered without additional physical proof. The find is a reminder that Mount Everest still guards secrets that resist easy resolution, despite a century of investigation and the most advanced tools available. Nearly 100 years after Andrew Irvine vanished into the high slopes of Everest, a fragment of his story has finally returned to the surface. The remains discovered on the central Rongbuk Glacier are the most direct evidence yet of Irvine's final climb. Family members have provided DNA reference samples to help confirm the identification beyond reasonable doubt. At the time of this report, DNA testing is underway. Results are expected to clarify whether the remains are definitively those of Andrew Irvine. Meanwhile, new expeditions are planned to survey adjacent ice fields. Researchers hope that continued glacial retreat may reveal additional artifacts, including the camera believed to hold summit photographs. Each recovered item adds context to a story that has captivated historians, climbers, and the public for generations. This discovery underscores the importance of preserving evidence in the world's most extreme environments. Without it, critical details risk being lost forever. Even now, the mountain keeps many of its secrets hidden. Whether Andrew Irvine and George Mallory stood on the summit before any other human being remains an open question, one that continues to inspire curiosity and respect. If you've found this report informative, consider subscribing to this channel. Your support helps us continue producing detailed investigative content about history's most enduring mysteries. Thank you for watching.